Alrighty, guys, welcome back to episode 2 of the Young Startup. Today we have a special friend, a guest of ours today. Good friend, our real estate agent. Actually, our family's real estate agent. Funny enough, Austin Towne. Austin. Austin right now he's a real estate agent. Has quite the story actually growing up and what he did as a young individual for himself to make a living, and then also a background as to his careers and what he did and how he's ended up to where he is today, and has seen a lot of success in the real estate industry. The reason why we wanted to bring him on today was because we feel as if he knows a lot about the industry, especially where we live out here in Vancouver. And he's helped us both of us get into our first homes, and has helped educate us on the market, but also, the benefit of buying real estate as a young individual and getting into the market early.
Yeah, thank you for the intro there, Eric. It's a pleasure being on this call tonight, going over what the benefits of getting into the real estate industry, either as a real estate agent or, just investing and buying your first place, especially at a young age. There's some great advantages to it. So really looking forward to doing a deep dive on
it. Awesome, Austin. Perfect. Well, we can hop right into it here. The first question that Brian and I wanted to make sure we covered, I guess is typical for podcasts, I should say, is just your background, your story, what's really driven you and what got you to where you are, kind of like the turbulence and the ups and the downs of your life and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, great question. I definitely got my interest in real estate from my dad. When I was a little kid, he did buy properties, fix them up, sell them, hold them as rentals, things like that. And kind of got my entrepreneurial drive from him as well. And yeah, so like as a young kid, like I would buy and sell gold, like I'd buy scrap gold, made a really good contact with the jeweler, would buy scrap gold for as cheap as I can, go to him, get it made into a nice piece, and then go ahead and flip that, like kind of taking different avenues, whether it was gold, diamonds, kind of making that work while I was in high school. And then once I graduated, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I just knew that I wanted to make money. So instead of going to university or anything like that, I kind of just looked around what my kind of options were, and had a friend that had an electrical company. So I got into that because I could start making money right away. Fast forward, what I realized is when you like get paid per hour, you're quite limited to what you can make. And I was working 80 hours a week and kind of seeing that, okay, like I'm making good money, but my income's capped. And that's kind of when I started thinking like, okay, what can I do differently? Like, what else is there? Because this isn't going to work. It's not going to cut it. So I started looking at other options, talking with my dad again. And I always kind of was interested in real estate. So, that kind of played a big part in it. And then, yeah, just kind of settled on trying out real estate. I had some family friends that were in the industry. So kind of reached out to them, and then just kind of made the jump. Like, I just had to look at it like I was losing money staying at an hourly job when there's so much potential being self-employed and an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, to probe on that question there, because I know Brian and I kind of were in a very similar position as to you were when you, because I know you started your real estate career while you were still working at your current job. I guess to all the people that are wanting to potentially leave their job, and pursue a life or a career in either real estate or entrepreneurship as a whole. Talk a little bit about that leap of faith that you had to take, or what that moment looked like when you knew that you wanted to go all into real estate.
Yeah, so working a full-time job and then also trying to start a business at the same time, like you're working crazy hours. And what made me want to make the jump was definitely like the fact, like looking at it, like, okay, from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., I can't work on my business because I'm doing electrical. That's when I realized, okay, like I'm losing money getting paid X amount of dollars per hour, like $28 an hour, whatever it was, when I could be spending that time working on my real estate business, doing showings, getting leads, And I actually remember the day like quite vividly. I was working on this job site in Richmond. I was on the tower roughing in fire alarm, and I got 2 phone calls from 2 clients that both wanted to list their house. And if I sold both those places and got them into new places, I would pretty much make what I already made that year. Like, cause this was pretty much July. And at that point, that's when I truly realized that like, okay, you just have to kind of have that faith in yourself and make the jump. I mean, you can cause I did that, like worked full time and did real estate for about 9 months, give or take. And to be honest, I wish I just started right off the bat, because I'd be 9 months more ahead than I am now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we share a similar story there, Austin. It's interesting because looking back at it, we wish we started early as well, but I think there's also times where you need to be grateful. And we're very grateful of how our situation ended up, because if we didn't have the job that we had, and we didn't end up working the way that we did, the financial success that we received from our corporate job ended up leading into us being able to invest into our business and did things the right way, is really what it came down to. So, yeah, it's quite crazy to see that these days.
Yeah, I'd say that's a really good point too. And something I kind of didn't really think about is I did do a lot of side work, and that did enable me to invest enough money into my real estate business when I did quit. So I could actually market myself, do proper advertising, do a lot of ad spend on social media. So I mean, yeah, like it's kind of a balancing act of, you gotta have faith in yourself that you can make money, but also, yeah, have some capital behind you, especially if you have like living expenses. Like at the time, I was very fortunate. I could stay with the family. So my living expenses were really, really low. So, I mean, the risk was I go back to doing electrical, right? It wasn't like
Yeah.
I was going to lose my house or anything like that. So,
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Cool. Awesome. So one of the questions that I had, and it's actually very relevant to me, because growing up, I always thought real estate agents, it was just another career. As a profession, it was a route that you could potentially take. But similar to what you just said, you're self-employed, you're a business owner, you're working on your business constantly. What do you have to say around that factor specifically? Is it more of a career, or is it more of a business? And how do you kind of differentiate those two?
well, to answer your question straight on, in my eyes, you're not a business owner until you have employees. So currently, like I'm almost there. Right now, I'd consider myself self-employed, right? While I'm working on the business, I don't really, just from my experience and what my dad has taught me, it's like you're truly a business owner when you have employees, and like, you know what I mean, you're supporting other people uh,
Absolutely.
in that way. But I mean, it really comes down to the agents, right? Because like you look at some agents, they're self-employed and they have been for 30, 40 years. And then you look at some people and they have a team of agents that are 15, 16, 20 agents strong. And I would say the guys that are at the top of that and have those teams are business owners, right? Like they have 16, 17 employees. Like it's a business at that point.
Yeah.
And the other kind of I guess feedback or people say it's just a career, like Remax is the business. You could argue people that franchise like a Tim Hortons or a McDonald's, like that independent owner has their own business, even though they're a franchise of McDonald's or Tim Hortons, right? Just like we are kind of like not necessarily a franchise of Remax, but we work underneath them as independent business owners.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Looking back at it, we worked at McDonald's when we grew up. Brian mentioned in our episode 1, but we started when we were young, when we were 13, and we were always working for people. And we would always have new, I guess they were called general managers or something like that at the time, but they were the store owners, and they were always in there responsible for hitting the targets and growing sales and adding people to the team. Very much of what a regular business owner would do, basically all those core activities that are needed and able to sustain a business, but also to grow it. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, and kind of probing off there, Austin. One of the things that I see that differentiates, like a regular career to a business or being self-employed, is the fact that you don't have a steady salary coming in. You are essentially in your own position, and you're figuring out ways to make money, specifically using real estate as an avenue. How do you take, or what's your approach when it comes to that kind of mindset shift, going from pretty much being pure commission, and how do you excel in that kind of environment?
I'd say, like, again, super fortunate to grow up in the household that I did. Like, it, one of the things my dad said to me often was not, you can't afford it, you just don't make enough, right? Like when people complain about the cost of living here in Vancouver, everything's very expensive. You just kind of have to take ownership of it and just make more money. So well, my first kind of jobs didn't have commission based. The goal wasn't to make X amount of money per hour. It's how much money can I make this year in a set period of time. So it was really just finding the vehicle to do that. So you know, like I absolutely love being commission only, and it's rewarding. I mean, you get exactly out what you put into it.
Awesome. Awesome. Perfect. Diving into the next question here, knowing you for the past X amount of years, you being in real estate for the past, I think it's been 3 years now.
Yeah, 3 years going on 4.
Yeah, I know that you've seen a ton of success. I've always looked at real estate personally as a business that you got to kind of stick into long term, and a lot of it comes from referrals down the road. But you've kind of worked past that, and you've been able to build like a massive network of people. You've been doing steady growth year over year. What is that specific thing or specific area that you excel in, that essentially separates you from those other realtors that are just starting off?
Work ethic and commitment, I would say, are the two biggest things. Like I'm in the office anywhere between 6 to 8 a.m. depending on the day, and I'm here and at 7:30 p.m. Right, no one else is here. So I mean that, and just good networking skills, right? Like whether it's within my sphere, the people I know, but to be honest, leaning on like within the industry networking really helped grow my business at an accelerated pace. Getting to know the other agents that are successful in my area, sitting down with them, going for lunch, like doing typical networking stuff, but with good intentions, not just like, hey, Mr. So-and-so, you're really good, I want to learn what you do. It was more so like, hey, like, let me buy you lunch and let's just kind of chat. And then so when it came down to doing deals with these other agents, it was, we already know each other. So things went a lot more smoothly.
Nice.
And in this kind of market we're in the Vancouver market, you're often competing and people want to work with people that they know and trust. So building those relationships as soon as possible was one of the, I would say, one of the biggest things in growing my business. And then as well as leveraging technology, like using social media, paid ads, and just organic education. Really help grow the business quite quickly.
That's awesome to hear. I'd love to probe kind of a little bit further into the networking aspect. I know that's been a huge part of both mine and Eric's success, not only being in our Amazon and e-commerce business, but also, through BCIT, we learned those networking skills. We learned how to develop those relationships at an early age. And that's definitely what set us apart in our corporate job. But, going into our Amazon business, I think a huge part of our success as well is purely due to the fact that we were resourceful and we were leaning on other people that have already succeeded in the business. So that's great that you said that. I definitely resonate a lot with that. And then probing off the second part, you talked about, leveraging social media. This kind of goes back to my question where, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of real estate agents that have been in the industry for a really long time, not the most tech savvy, so to speak. So what specific things did you do with social media that has allowed you to accelerate your business?
Great question. Kind of reflecting on how the industry has changed a little bit is realtors and real estate agents used to be the gatekeepers of information. Like you had to come to us if you wanted to know what places sold for, what the market is doing, etc. But now all of that stuff, because of technology, the internet, social media, it's all available to common people that want to find out. You don't have to go through us to get that information. So it wasn't just being on social media, but it was giving the education right out of the gate, like no obligation, no nothing, right? Like you can go on my Instagram page right now and you can learn a ton about getting into the market. So it was just really about just giving a ton of value. And like honestly, like I did it for 2 years, and now 2 years down the road, I'm starting to really see the benefits of that. But it's just giving a ton of value up front and letting people respond to it.
Yeah. Consistency is key with everything. Absolutely. And
Exactly.
trusting the process, right? A lot of the times where, you don't see the success right off the bat, but if you have the right intentions, you're doing the right thing every single day, it will pay off regardless of when it pays off, whether that be in 3 years, 5 years, or, the next day, it will pay off eventually. So it's great hearing that from you.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, it was a little bit of a roller coaster, like through the last couple of years. Like, it's like I'd go hard on Instagram, and then like it felt like, oh, like I really didn't get anything. So I'd go like hard on like Facebook ads, and it's like, oh, okay. But then it's just kind of running through the learning experiences and realizing that exactly that, Eric, like consistency is the key to it,
Mhm.
and just showing up and giving value. And then, but then also like when someone reaches out, putting them in like a system like my CRM and making sure that I follow up with them, right? Like you guys, as an example, like we bumped into each other at the bar, had a
Yeah.
quick chat about real estate, right? And then the next day I hit you up on Facebook, like, hey, Eric, hey, Brian, like,
Yeah.
great seeing you. And honestly, I messaged you both because I wasn't sure which one I was talking
I love it. That's the twin thing.
to.
That's the twin thing.
But like, it's just like creating value, getting the initial person, and then just massive action on follow up, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Good
a
old
lot,
Grant Cardone there.
a lot of agents, because they're not tech savvy, don't either have the systems to handle the leads
Right.
or like the knowledge of how to do it effectively, right? Like if I have to call every person in my database once a month, I'd be on the phone all day, right? But
Mhm.
Mhm.
now on social media to contact the people is a lot more efficient, which a lot of agents, I mean, a lot of people are doing it, but there's a lot of people that aren't catching up with the times.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I
Mhm.
think another big thing that I know you do really well as well is like you definitely fulfill on your promises and you do what you say what you're going to do. So like you're very you have a high level of integrity, and
Mhm.
at the beginning I mentioned that you are a family real estate agent, and that's truly a result of that. So
Mhm.
that's awesome to see that. And before I lose it out of my head here, one other thing I wanted to go into, and I wanted to ask this while Brian was in the midst of asking you questions here. But first off, Austin, why don't you let the crowd know how old you are? First off,
23.
23. Okay, cool. And the reason I want to bring that up was because and Brian and I were similar in this sense as well. But we had a career in sales, and one of the biggest things that we were scared of when we got into the industry was, are people going to trust these young people, right? And I know because I've inquired about real estate as well with a few people that have been in my network, and one of the many times I've heard that the first thing that you're going to experience is the turbulence, that you're too young, you're not going to get any trust, all that kind of stuff. So I'd love for you to dive into your experience working around that, if that's even been an issue for you, and if it has been, like what would you say to other people that might have that fear?
Definitely ran into that issue a lot, especially like, right? Because when I got my license, I was 20,
Yeah.
right? Like I actually didn't even own any real estate, right? So it
Yeah.
was, it was definitely hard to build that trust and faith.
Credibility.
And definitely a lot of times, like especially dealing with my own sphere, like the parents are like, oh, like, yeah, you've been in it for a year, you've sold a couple condos here and there, right? But when you're talking detached homes in the greater Vancouver area, they're typically over $1 million. So they're like, like you haven't really done $1 million deals. Like what's, I don't know, like we don't really want to put seven figures in your hands type of thing at 20, 21, 22, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I definitely experienced a lot of setbacks with that, just that one objection. And to be honest, the best way to handle it, in at least in my industry, is partnering with people that can anchor me on that side. So one of the things is with Remax, right? Like it's the best brokerage. It's the most well-known brokerage. The brokerage has been around for one of the longest periods of time, that performs at a very high level year after year. So that helped. Like that would get me in the door.
Hmm.
And then if I couldn't do it myself, instead of losing the deal, I'll bring someone in on it, right? Like I have a couple agents, couple family friends, and that I've partnered with that, especially at the early ages where we did a lot of co-listings or co-deals.
Right.
It was me and another agent that has been in the business for 10, 15, 20 years, has some development history, stuff like that, right? So it was, yeah, partnering where I couldn't do it myself. And then also just sheer hard work, right? Because one of the things like, well, what can you do that this agent that's been in the business for 20 years can't do? I
Right.
can outwork them.
I love it. I love that.
That was literally what I had to do at the beginning, was just outwork them, right?
Yeah,
Like show up
that's
with a
awesome.
better marketing package, show up earlier, show up more often, have better follow-up, have better client care. And simply just had to outwork them until I got to the point where it's like, I haven't really had that objection the last, say, like 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. That's incredible. Cool. Austin. So, now, we talked a lot about your past. For the people that are wanting to get into real estate, I definitely, especially the people locally, would love to dive more into what the market looks like right now, what the pros are of getting into the market, but also if there's any cons or anything like that, and just what you're seeing in terms of trends and everything these days.
Yeah. Do you want to specifically talk about getting into the market like as like a buyer, or getting into the market like at like becoming an agent?
Let's talk about as a buyer first
Okay.
off. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, buy real estate and wait is the simplest way to put it. Um, like for instance, like I'm competing in multiple offers right now tonight. This homeowner purchased the home for 834,000 at the beginning of 2018, being the end of 2020. Now we're above the $1 million, like 1.1 price point. So I mean, they've made around 350 grand just in equity, like just appreciation, sorry, not a loan. It was a tenanted property, so they had it rented. So they had cash flow as well paying into the mortgage. So I mean, getting into the market as soon as you can is, I would say, kind of the key factor, because the longer you have it, the better you're going to do. I mean, if you look at shorter periods of time, like 3 to 5 years, yeah, there can be ups and downs. And if you buy and it goes down, the biggest piece of advice is being able to hold the property, not to over leverage yourself,
Mhm.
especially when you're into the market for the first time and you really don't have any other assets to lean on to if the real estate market does go down. But you don't actually lose any money unless you sell the property, right?
Right.
So I would say being educated into tax savings and first-time homebuyer incentives, which can help you get into the market sooner, rather than continuing to pay rent if that's the case. I mean, if you're fortunate enough to live in a place where you have very low living expenses, ride that out, save as much as you can, because at least here in BC, or in Canada in general, we have like the 20% down payment rule, where if you are less than 20%, you do have to pay mortgage insurance, which can
Right.
add on 10 to 20 grand in your mortgage amount, depending on your price point. But if you're paying rent and you're paying $1,500 a month, you'll pay for their insurance in a year, and then you're also controlling your own asset. But if you can hit that 20% mark, you can get a lot better financing options to make your payments lower and all that. But at the end of the day, yeah, just buy real estate and wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Real estate always grows over time. So that's Brian and I's goal as well. Have some properties and over time see the growth in it. So
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like with your guys' properties, right? Like I think um, covering your short-term needs, but then also how can we structure this purchase to pay us future dividends? Like,
mhm.
how can we buy a property that's going to help us in the future, even after we're done for using as our primary residence, right? So
Yep.
making sure, especially if you're younger and you're buying your first place, it's most likely going to be a condo if you're in the Vancouver area. So one of the things you want to make sure is that you can rent it out, right? Because a lot of these products, these homes, are going to be very good rental properties, right?
Mhm.
Especially if
Yeah.
you buy, again, location, location, location. Um, if you buy a condo in a good spot, it's going to be a good rental, right? So how can we make sure that this first purchase, while it might not be your dream home, how can it help get you there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, on our first condo already, like we're already renting that first property out, and we're cash flowing over $150 on a monthly basis, which is pretty
Mhm.
significant considering we bought it, what, a year ago, 2 years ago, 2 years ago now, less than 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But that I think that speaks lengths towards not only the real estate market, but also just the rental market as well. People are always looking, due to the fact that cost of living is significantly high in the Vancouver area here. So yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to get into a home these days out here. That's for sure. But yeah, location for us was huge. And then also like, for the people in BC that are listening, a lot of benefits of being a first-time home buyer. So, you want to talk about those, Austin? Like, the RSP advantage that we took advantage of, and also the first-time home buyer credit that we have access to.
Okay, yeah. So first time buyer incentives, right? So there is the RSP grant, which you guys took advantage of, right? So you can borrow up to 35,000 from your RSP without paying income tax on it to form part of your down payment. And then you just have to pay that back over the next 15 years, but you get the initial tax savings of putting that money into the RSP as long as it's 90 days before closing, right? So it's 35 grand before taxes, so you can save some money there as well.
Right.
As well as you can be exempt from property transfer tax if the purchase price is under 500 grand on resale or under 750 for new construction. And I mean, we, like your guys' deal, we kind of structured it where one of you went on title for the first deal, and then the other one went on title for the second deal. So you got exempt on both deals. So you saved 16, 17 grand, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's really about planning on not just short term, but long term, your real estate kind of goals and progress. And all these first time homebuyer credits are in the How to Buy in Your 20s guide that you guys can get as well after the podcast here.
Yeah.
We'll be sure to promote that out, and we'll send it out to everybody, whoever is interested, and make sure there's a downloadable link. But Austin's done a great job focusing on the younger demographic. He's made it as simple as possible to buy in your 20s just by simply making a guide and giving you guys all the tips. So we'll be sure to do that. We'll be sure to do that and share that out. Now, Austin, another question that I had, and I know this is probably very cliche given the time of the year that we're in right now, but COVID. So, how did COVID impact your business specifically, and how did you have to adapt? I know a lot of businesses had to adapt, including myself and Eric, in the real estate game, as well as just your overall career. How did it get affected?
Yeah, so I mean, COVID has affected the real estate industry in a magnitude of different ways. I would say one of the kind of most immediate things we saw was that separation of agents who are using today's technology versus yesterday's technology. Like utilizing video and 3D walkthroughs like the Matterport, which is like essentially like a Google Street View HD version of the inside of a house. And really leaning into those technologies to market homes. So people felt comfortable at least viewing them virtually. And I mean, we did write some deals without people walking through the homes. Like they still did their inspections and stuff like that, right? But they didn't actually view it until completion. But for the most part, like that was kind of a unique situation. For the most part though, what we did is we leveraged that technology. Instead of having 50, 60 people through the home, we would have 5 or 6, because those 50, 60 people would do the video, the virtual walkthroughs and all that. And then, to be honest, we would read through them and pre-qualify them, talk to the agents like, hey, like, have you guys have your financing in place? Do you have your place sold? Because, right, a lot of people have to sell their place to make a move.
Yeah.
And so it was really just honestly qualifying people earlier and at a higher level before viewing homes. So that was kind of different. Normally it was a lot more social, right? Like open houses, and like people would just walk in off the street, you'd meet them, strangers. And like, I really do miss that, right? Because I did quite well at picking up business at open houses. But it is also kind of nice now that we're typically dealing with very qualified people when we are viewing homes and going out into the public and stuff like that, right? So I mean, that was a huge change. And I mean, it also that was kind of within the industry. And then when you look at the market, people may have made some drastic changes in their life because of COVID. They've reevaluated a lot of things. Other opportunities have become available with companies working from home. You guys experienced it, right? Could you imagine if you didn't have a second office?
No.
Or like a second room for an office or something like
yeah,
so
it's crazy.
We saw a lot of people making like honestly, everyone I talked to, even this late into the year, everyone's moving, and the answer is to get more size, to get a yard.
Mhm.
Those are the common denominators.
Fair enough.
So I mean, that is what we've kind of seen the market switch. So that's why we've seen such big increases in the detached market and the larger townhouse market. Like anything with 3 bedrooms in a yard has done really, really well. And condos in certain areas, like especially like downtown Vancouver, have quite softened. And we're seeing a lot of developers offer incentives to sell some of their pre-sale stuff. So I mean, could also be a very good time to get in the condo market. All things aside, yeah, I mean, it just accelerated the real estate industry to use technology more and looking at obviously all the benefits. I mean, there's all the cons to everything, but like I like to keep everything very positive and optimistic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely just accelerated the technology switch in the industry.
Yeah, and again, like I think you hit the nail on the head there. Not just the real estate industry; it's crazy what approach you needed to take. But it kind of shown more options, more ways that you can sell. You can get more creative, and I think at the end of the day, I know a lot of businesses. Facebook, as an example, I'm pretty sure they shut down like half of their office space. They reduced salaries and then got people to work from home because of the fact that they were just as productive working from home.
Mhm.
So cool. That's good to know. Now, kind of closing out here, a couple of questions that I had, and more so around advice specifically. So one of the first things, and we chatted around this, some advice specifically for first-time home buyers, the younger individuals, so to speak. Are there anything outside of those benefits that you could give to those younger individuals wanting to get into the real estate market, from an investment standpoint, or even just for their first time home property, like right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is to think long term with this purchase.
Mhm.
Um, Make sure that you can rent it. Like just when you're buying, because in again talking in BC, for the most part, your first purchase is going to be in a strata, and you want to make sure you have the ability to rent it because I think that really opens the doors to long term options. So I would say when you're looking, keep that in mind, as well as make a budget. That's like one of the biggest things that I see with first time home buyers when I sit down with them and I ask them, I'm like, what's, because when I sit down with someone, I want to not just sell them real estate. Like I want to understand their kind of life goals and where they want to go. Because at the end of the day, I want to sell them into something that is going to align with their goals, not hurt their goals. Right. So if people, I mean, pre-COVID, they wanted to do a lot of traveling and do all this stuff, then we kind of kept that in mind. Well, while the bank may give them X amount of money, we actually want to keep their budget here so they can still maintain their lifestyle that they want.
Yep.
As well as like just education, like making sure you're aware of your costs. And one of the things that I did, and I mentioned it in the How to Buy in Your 20s guide, is when you're buying stuff, like especially if you're getting paid hourly, like don't look at it as these new sneakers are 120 bucks. No, it's 8 hours of your life, right? Like it's when you're getting paid per hourly. I think that was one of the things too that helped me save a lot of money when it was like, okay, like do I really need these like Air
Yeah.
Maxes or whatever, right? Like I just worked 8 hours in the pissing rain and -4 to
Yeah.
get these. No, like I'm gonna save my money.
Yeah.
So yeah, just making a budget, being aware of where your money's going, and then just setting that the goal to get into the market is kind of your first step, and following the budget and saving your down payment, and then looking at options if whether it's buying with a friend or a significant other or family to get your foot in the door. The only note on that is again making sure you're thinking long term and exit strategy. Sorry, and what's the plan if someone wants to move on before the other one does. But like right now, what I've seen in the marketplace is a lot of younger guys or girls buying a place with their friend with the long term plan of it being their investment property together. Right.
Yeah.
So they'll, like I had 2 clients just get into the market. They paid 13 grand each. Right. They had to pay the CMHC mortgage insurance. Right. So that cost them 15 grand, but it got added to their mortgage.
Mhm.
But they got into the real estate market in Vancouver, like the greater Vancouver area, for 13 grand.
Yeah.
Right. So when people
Huge.
say it's not doable, you just don't know enough. You just need to get the right information from the right people to make the right decisions.
Yeah. One big take or one big tip that I actually got, or I should say it's an exercise actually. If you're looking to get into a place, and both Brian and I did this as well, but when it came to saving, especially if you're getting paid fairly well, you tend to spend a lot more than you probably need to. So a really good exercise to do for those types of people or people that just have trouble savings is to actually go into like their bank statement or their credit card statement and actually categorizing all of your expenses in there and figuring out like, okay, this is how much I spend on food. This is how much I spend on my car and gas and all that kind of stuff. This is how much I spend on entertainment, and figure out what you can actually take out of that. And set some budgets for yourself, just like you had mentioned, whether that be like $100 for entertainment a month, which is actually a lot of money. But over time that can add up pretty quickly. And if you have a goal to save, just like Austin mentioned, like $13,000 over a 12-month period, it's absolutely doable. You just need to have the right strategy in place and commit to the strategy to be able to do it and reach that goal at the end of it. So
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that's even a good point, not only before purchasing, but also after purchasing. Expense management has been huge just in terms of, you're juggling now a mortgage to pay, especially if you're actually living in that place. So, that comes from planning, whether that be having a savings for X amount of time that you plan on living so that you can pay off those additional expenses, or you just got to hustle more, work more, and make some more money at the end of the day.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you can always cut your spending, but like cutting your spending isn't going to make it work long term.
yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if the goal should be to make more money.
totally.
Exactly.
Like,
I agree.
just the unfortunate truth that no matter, like, you can spend a little bit of money, but at the end of the day, you're still not going to be able to afford everything just by cutting your spending. You have to look at other avenues to make more money, whether it is picking up extra shifts, working on the side. Like when I was doing electrical, I worked 8 to 10 hours at a big company, and then I would work another 4 to 6 hours in the evening, and then on the weekends doing side work, like doing rentals at people's houses, stuff like that. Just kind of sacrificing now so you can get into the market and then kind of let the asset work for you, right?
Yeah.
Like any other investment. Yeah, and I mean, kind of jumping back to the budget thing, because I think I kind of need to stress that a little bit, especially if you are buying a place with a minimum down payment, like that 13 grand scenario, with like, so 26 grand in total between two people. Like, I sat down with them for probably like a good 4 or 5 hours twice, running their numbers, right? Because when I sell someone into a place, I want to make sure that they can actually afford it. And when you're going into that high ratio mortgage, like you have to really make sure that if times get a little bit tougher, that you can actually keep the asset and you don't have to sell it.
Yeah.
And so it's making that budget and factoring in things that a lot of people don't think about. Like, a lot of people, for whatever reason, I just find it with our age demographic, they don't budget oil changes. That is like the one thing that, like, right? But it's getting down to those couple dollars, especially when people are buying with that little down, to make sure that they're financially capable and it will be an actual investment and not something that's going to cause them turmoil later.
Right.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Now, kind of flipping the switch here, still in the advice section, but what is some advice that you have for individuals actually looking to become real estate agents and making that a career? What would be the first steps? You can even put this into your perspective on how you kind of got the ball rolling on things, but also just your experience being a new agent over the past 3 years. What is some advice that you have for younger individuals again?
Yeah, I mean, getting into the industry, I love it. I mean, some people don't like it. I'd say the biggest cons are the commission, the fact that you're fully commissioned. And the big difference in the real estate industry is we don't get paid until the deal actually completes. So when you first get into the business, if you don't do your first deal for 3 months and that deal doesn't complete for 3 to 6 months, you won't get paid for 6 to 9 months while you've been carrying costs for that the first 9 months. And I mean, though the beginning is one of the more expensive times, right? Because you have your licensing fees, you have your first insurance fees, your brokerage fees, your signs, all that stuff, as well as you also have to spend more on marketing when you're new in the business, right? It's not like you're trying to maintain or or grow your existing business, you have to actually build that brand recognition from nothing.
Yeah.
So you definitely want to have some money saved to get started. Kind of a little hack there though is you can join a team. That is a very good option, especially even if you know someone in the business that has a team and you can kind of lean into it. I mean, you're going to have smaller commissions because you're splitting it with the team, but you get value for that, right? So say you have a 50-50 split with the team, typically that team's going to pay for all of your original marketing materials. And you're going to be able to lean on the education and the knowledge of the team, because typically these guys have been in the business for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
As well as you can learn their systems and processes on how they run their business. So I think either having a little bit of money saved and the work ethic to do it yourself, or join a team. I would say really the only con of joining a team is typically they market as the team. So you're not building your brand recognition or your name per se as much as you would as a single agent. But I mean, there is some trade-offs there where you're getting the learning curve will be a little bit quicker on a team than as a single agent.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I was just very fortunate. I mean, I started part-time as well, so I didn't really feel I would bring a lot of value to the team. And I think that was more of a self-limiting belief. Because now that I'm in the industry, I see a lot of teams with part-time agents that are working just to kind of fill in the workload, as well as a part-time agent actually should probably be on a team. So when they're at their other job, they have someone covering their business.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, I was fortunate when I got in that I had a lot of people I could lean on to, that I didn't necessarily need to be on a team. I had a really good family friend, as well as the brokerage that I'm at. I just got like over the top mentorship on it. And we have a very good open door policy. Like I could sit here in the bullpen and just ask a question and someone will come out and help me.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say either join a team or join a really good brokerage that has almost like a family kind of culture.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. And the reason I say that is because it's a very similar approach to us as well. When people are getting started within the e-commerce or Amazon space, common factors that you've been seeing, what it sounds like, it's pretty much relationships going into the business, networking with people that essentially have what you already have already essentially gone through that process, has proven the model. And you just essentially just need to learn from them, which is great. That's great to hear. So lastly, just to sum things up, where can we find you on social media? For anyone wanting to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do so? And what are your social handles?
Yeah, so it's Austin Towne Real Estate, and Town is Towne. There's an E on the end there. Yeah, Austin Towne Real Estate on Instagram and Facebook, and then www.austintowne.com.
Awesome. I appreciate your time here, Austin.
Yeah, it was my
Alrighty.
pleasure, guys.
Thanks so
All right,
much.